Hi everyone, my name is Shelley from Shelley's Indoor Jungle, and today I'm going to be talking to you about 10 tips that you need to keep in mind if you are a plant parent beginner. Owning plants is not just buying one and putting it in a corner. There's a lot more to it than that. In fact, this video will probably be a part 1 of 2 parts. So let's get going. Tip number 1. So if you are a beginner plant parent, I would definitely suggest that the first thing you do is buy plants that are really easy to take care of. And in fact, I've actually uploaded a video about my top 4 plants that I recommend for beginners. You really should not just go to a garden center and just buy the first plant that you like. A lot of them actually have a lot of different care routines. They need different amounts of water, they need different amounts of light. So definitely start off with easy plants. Even easy plants are really gorgeous. So if you look at this like golden pothos, it's so lush and trailing. And then there's another variant of the pothos with this gorgeous neon color. There's this easy plant that's, I mean, look at it, it's so structural, so full. Super easy plants, all of them. So you do not need to go for something fancy like the dragon scale alocasia, which is really a bit of a headache. Like, I'm constantly worried about it, worried if I see a little bit of a yellow tip, because it's, first of all, a bit of an expensive plant, and secondly, it's just so susceptible to pests, so susceptible to being underwatered, overwatered. If you're a beginner, you don't want all these things that you need to keep in mind. Start off easy. Tip number 2. If you're going to buy some plants, first check where you're going to put the plants. Check your surroundings, check the environment that you have. Is it an area that is in direct sun? Is it an area that has low light? Is it an area that is next to an AC? You know, you need to check all these things, because there are plants like the pothos, for example, that will be quite fine in a room where there's AC or heater and it's quite dry and not humid, but a plant like the alocasia will not like it. Tip number 3. Definitely do not water your plants with tap water, especially if the tap water is hard, full of chemicals and minerals. Just keep in mind, if the tap water is not good for you to drink, it's not good for the plants to drink either. Good water that you can use to water your plants is rainwater, air conditioner water, dehumidifier water. Distilled water and fertilized water is okay, but keep in mind that generally fertilized water does tend to destroy all the good minerals along with the bad minerals. So it's not the ideal. It's still better than tap water, but not the ideal. Tip number 4. Plants do not need an exact watering schedule. So don't be like, every Saturday is going to be my watering day. Especially because a lot of plants need different types of watering. So for example, a coleus will need to be watered maybe every 2 days in summer, whereas a pothos can be left for like 2 weeks. But again, it's not an exact 2 weeks. You need to keep in mind how the environment has been lately, how the weather has been. If it was really sunny and hot, most likely the chances are the soil dried out much quicker. So you might have to water every 10 days instead of every 14 days. So always keep in mind how the weather has been, the conditions, if a plant is in more of a warmer area, if the plant is in a cooler area, even lower light. If a plant is in lower light, chances are it uses much less water, so the soil will remain moist for a longer period of time. And also, this brings me to tip number 5. Use your fingers to check the soil, to check if it's still moist. That's what I like doing. Personally, I sometimes have used moisture meters, but what happens is I put it in and I think, I wonder if this is correct, and then I check with my finger anyway. So personally, I don't really trust them. I prefer to feel with my fingers to see if the soil is moist. So just really don't be afraid to put your finger in there. Check, I would say like until the second knuckle, to see if the soil is still moist, and if it feels super dry, then you can water your plants. Something else I like to do, for example, with a Hoya, which I really like letting dry out, so it comes out of the pot super easy. I just pull it out and check if the soil is wet. If it's not, I water. And another trick is to pick up the pot. If the pot feels light, then you probably need to water. Again, a lot of plants need a lot of different types of watering. So an alocasia does not need to dry out as much as a Hoya does. These all come with practice, but you'll start to learn to feel the soil and say, okay, so the alocasia is drying out. Okay, the Hoya is definitely still moist. I don't need to water it. We are halfway through the video. I hope you're enjoying it. Feel free to like and subscribe if you want to see more, and let me know in the comments what other videos you want to see. Tip number 6. So, indoor plants are generally plants that do not like direct light. Even in the wild, they are found in places that are quite shaded, like for example by big trees. So we're talking about forest floors. So they get filtered light even in the wild. That being said, there are some indoor plants that do tolerate direct light, which is good, because I know sometimes we have spaces which are a bit limited and we have a few hours where we would be getting direct light where we want to place a plant. So I wouldn't say as a rule of thumb, but the plants that I do find are tolerant of direct light are generally plants that have thick, waxy, succulent leaves. So we're talking about succulents, we're talking about Hoyas, we're talking about ZZ plants, snake plants. All these plants generally are okay with direct light. In fact, I'll be making a separate video on this to tell you guys what plants I recommend if you have an area that gets quite a few hours of direct light. Other than that, plants with flimsy leaves like coleus, like peace lilies, they are so thin that they won't burn in direct sun, but what will happen is the moisture will be absorbed from the leaves really quickly and they will droop massively and get super thirsty if they are put in direct sun. Other plants like pothos, marenta, sprayer plants, they will just burn in direct sun and you do not want that. So keep in mind that ideally you keep plants in, for example, behind sheer curtains, a little bit back from a window that gets direct sun, so that you don't burn the leaves and it's not too much stress on them. Tip number 7. This is like one of the more important tips. When you are at a garden center, definitely check for pests. Every time I found pests on my plants, I would have just recently bought a new plant and probably I would have brought them in with me from my shopping spree. And it really sucks, you guys. So I generally don't really care anymore. I just pick up plants. I check the under leaves. I check in between. I check them really thoroughly, because it is not worth it to bring pests home and just have them spread. It really, really sucks. And sometimes it happens. There will be garden centers that unfortunately have pests. It's almost inevitable, but as much as possible, try to control it. This brings me on to tip number 8. Every once in a while, I would say like at least a couple of times a week, check your foliage, check what's going on with the plants, check if there's any weird like discoloration or browning, because it might be pests, it might be overwatering, it might be underwatering, direct sun. Just check and see if the plant is somehow declining. I usually check mostly because of pests. And always check even under the leaves, because some pests like spider mites actually like to hide under there. It is okay if you find a few yellowing leaves, especially if they're like the older leaves. It's normal. I generally just let them dry out and pick them out and throw them away. So that's fine if you find a few older leaves dying. If you see a plant in general declining, that's when the alarm bells should start ringing. Tip number 9. If you have any pets, especially really curious ones, definitely check that the plants that you're going to buy are not harmful or toxic to them. I've actually received messages on Instagram of people telling me that they've had like their cat or their dog nibble on a plant and they were going to like lose them because they can be toxic. So definitely do your research on that. I will be posting a video on plants that are safe for pets as well in the future, so look out for that. Tip number 10. If you want your plants to grow evenly, rotate them. Plants generally grow towards the light. So, for example, I definitely wanted this guy to grow evenly and bushy. So every now and then, and here's a good tip to remember to rotate them, every time I water him, I just give him a quarter turn. And like that, all sides grow evenly. This guy, on the other hand, is on a shelf for me, so I'm fine with him just growing to one side. In fact, I never rotate him, and as you can see, he's growing to this side, and this side is empty. So, depending on how you want your plants to look, you can definitely manipulate how they grow. This is the end of the video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and let me know in the comments, do you have any other tips that have helped you in your plant journey? Subscribe and like if you want to watch more of these videos, and check out my website www.shelleysindoorjungle.com if you want to see some cool stuff that I have, like these pots here. So definitely check your surroundings before going to blah. Tip number 9. If you have any pets,
Pets, not pets.
Okay. So definitely check what your surroundings are.